Right, so the next look I'm going to do is a layered look that has some of the cutout stuff that you see on this side, that orange undershirt, and then it has a more classic sweater and skirt kind of combination, something that very reminiscent of the 50s. So a little contemporary take on a sort of classic look, and adding again one of the options that we were looking at as far as design trends for the spring season. So, and with all the models that we're putting together, I do want you to try to get faces and hair on these models. That could be a little bit of an afterthought, but I still want you to sort of plan around that. For this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of establish where the waist of this piece is going to go. Skirts comes up a little high, so I'm going to go up around the navel area, belly button, and again, her body is tilted this way. So I think that the sort of belt on this thing is going to be tilted this way. And I'm going to start by making that sort of hem. From there, we want to look, this is a pretty long and flowy skirt. It sort of pleats out just a little bit at the hips. But for the most part, it's going to hug, especially this outer hip. But as it falls down, it's sort of going to flare out a little bit. Same thing on this side, we got the pleats over here, and it's definitely going to flare out a little bit. Now, how do I deal with creating all these little sort of ruffles and adjustments as far as like creating folds on there? Well, the bottom of this hem, you can kind of make some of these little squiggly sort of lines. All right, a little bit different than what I did before. Since now I have the silhouette of that skirt, now I'm going to go in and get rid of some of the stuff that's underneath right now that you could see, the legs and the hips and everything else like that. So now what am I going to do with these little squiggly lines over here? These are going to be creases and folds. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick that sort of little indent part that I drew in there, and I'm going to make a little line that goes up. All right, that line doesn't have to go all the way to the top, but what it does is it creates the indication that that sort of material is sort of folding over. So if you saw how I drew the bottom of the skirt, again, if you have to, pause, rewind, and go back again, I've made some little sort of squiggle kind of lines, and then on the indents of those lines are the areas that I decided to take a line and go up vertically. Now, we don't have to make those lines all the same length, but again, that's going to create that hint that this is billowy fabric that is sort of folding in and out all over one another. We can always add another line of stress or like a little crease and a fold in there. And then up near the top where the dress is kind of pleated, we want to kind of add a couple little marks to kind of indicate that the fabric itself has been folded underneath, and that kind of gives it's sort of that body that makes it sort of pop out a little bit. So that's how I would handle the skirt. I made my skirt, I guess, a little bit shorter than what it is in the actual model thing, but I made it go beneath the knee. Now we're going to work on the sweater. So let's get that V-neck in. Okay, and this is one of those heavyweight, like sort of merino wool sweaters. It's very fuzzy, so I'm going to let it puff out off the body a little bit. So I'm going to give it a little bit of thickness for just the sake of the shoulders, and just to show that the material is a little bit thicker. Now, she's got her sleeves rolled up. So what I want to do is I want to kind of have to make the material here look like bunched up. Kind of create that, a little bit of that sense of the rolled up sleeves. And once I have like the silhouette of what that sleeve is going to look like, then I've got, the opportunity to erase what's going on the inside of there. And then just like with the other things, when we have like fabric that's folded up on itself and sort of like just wrinkled almost, like how the sleeves in that particular thing are, we just want to create a few lines of emphasis. And those lines of emphasis, the best way to do them is to make sure that they're not all the same thickness or the same sort of weight, and that'll kind of give me a sense that, okay, this is fabric over here that's bunched up by her sleeve. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. I've got my silhouette over here. I'm going to make a few bumps like of the fabric, I'm going to decide where her sort of rolled up sleeve ends, which is going to be near the elbow. I'll get in there and clean up some of my underdrawing. And then again, a couple of those sort of random lines for indication that the fabric has been kind of rolled up over there. I've got the sort of neckline done. I'm going to make the fabric just pop off the body just a little bit. And then the undershirt that is sort of form-fitting is really just going to be exactly the shape of the arms. I'm not going to have to do really much on that. If I decided that I wanted to make some of those little cutouts, I can make a couple little cutouts in there as I wish. I can also do that here on the actual shirt itself underneath. And there I think I have the basic outfit that you see, the Prada outfit that she's wearing there. Obviously some of these things are going to read differently once we add color to them, but that gives you a little bit of a feel to it. I've already gone ahead and added some hair to my model, and we're doing it all pulled back, a little bit of a poof. So we'll have that over there. I have my drawing from yesterday. I'm going to go to my last model of this particular drawing. I'll look for another little look, something else, something a little different. Try to do some baggy stuff. I try to do some stuff in different sort of weights. You know, maybe I'll go with a sort of baggy sweater look with the feathers over here. And what we'll do is we'll just pull that up right over there. All right, so we'll do the biggest part. The biggest piece of this thing is obviously the sweater. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of come up with the sort of crew neck over here, and seeing that it is such a big and thick and heavy sweater, I'm going to add just a little bit of thickness to the model's shoulder and arms, and I'm going to let this sort of work as a silhouette all the way going down to the cuff and the sleeve, which is a little baggier. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to add some thickness to the arm to sort of represent how thick and how baggy that top sweatshirt would be. I'll go ahead and clean that up. Add some of that onto the other side as well. So a little bit more, and then obviously have it come taper off at the wrist. Since this is, you know, a pose where my model is kind of standing a little bit at a 3/4 thing, I'm going to add a little bit of the more area to the bust line in this case, because, you know, it's not just the bust line, but it's also the sweater itself. I'll just add a little bit more form there, and I'll add a little bit more form in and around here. This sweater hangs really low beneath the sort of you know, hips over here. So what I'm going to do is I'll decide where that sort of sweater is going to sort of fall along the body, and add a little bit more material on the opposite side. And, you know, since the sweater is kind of big and, you know, sort of fabricy, I don't have to add too many things as far as like creases and lines. If you want, you can kind of add a little texture to this drawing. I'll do that to kind of show off like the cording and how thick that weave is. I'm just going to kind of add a few vertical lines to kind of represent the texture of that thing. And then we have the skirt. While this thing kind of hugs the body, even though it's a little bit bigger, the skirt just kind of sort of erupts into a lot of different layers and textures. So number one I would work on what the silhouette of this particular thing is. And since it is so fabricy and wispy, even though her leg is over here, I'll have that kind of stick out off the body. And since I'm kind of working with a material that I want to sort of show that it's a little bit of see-through, I'm not going to completely erase the legs underneath this thing. What I might do is the part that is in the skirt, just make that a little bit lighter. And since there is so much texture to all this sort of feathered out material, what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue making some of those marks. Like the silhouette that I made of the dress, I'm going to continue making some of those marks and kind of lightly fill it in. Now the way I'm going to make this effect kind of work is first I'm starting with some light marks, and then I want to add a few dark ones. By having multiple layers, like a light layer and then a darker layer, kind of adds a little bit of depth to the drawing, makes it look like there is, layer upon layer of, texture, fur or feathers or whatever you want to consider it. So at first when I went light, I kind of put a lot more, and now that I'm adding some dark marks, those dark marks are I'm picking and choosing, I'm not putting them everywhere. So you can see really what I've done over here. I've kind of created this whole texture. We have the top part, which is this, looks like a bulky sweater. You can see that it pops up off the body a little bit, and then the bottom has this loose and wispy kind of textural skirt that almost you can see the leg in through it. And then we'll kind of finish off once again with our ankles. All right, so over the course of a couple periods here, we've got a few different looks. I'm going to snap a quick snapshot of this.